So you have a series of hormones discovered. Secretin, insulin, 1922, big game changer for anybody who ever suffered from diabetes. There would be an awful lot of people that would be dead for not the discovery of insulin. Load of others, and more recently things like leptin and ghrelin. Just remember leptin, this is to do with regulation of fats. Okay? Don't worry about the others, I'm not going to mention them really. So, amino acids, arginine. Very simple, very basic. To me, I instantly think of sol. Sol. Cell, sol.
Oh, right.
Yes? Big round circle, dot in the middle. Fairly simple. So I'm stretching this analogy a little more. Okay? So we have the humble egg. Now the egg is the best example, the most visible example we have of a single cell, the egg. We can grab hold of it. In fact, we will have some eggs later on. Yeah. We'll play around with them a bit. But everything you need for life is contained within the cell. It is chock-a-block with proteins. The whites is predominantly where all the protein lies. Chock-a-block with amino acids. Inside that you have a membrane of the cell, which relies fundamentally on two things. One is phospholipids and the other one is cholesterol. Cholesterol plays a huge role in cell structure, permeability, how it holds itself. It is vital. Without cholesterol, you'd be dead. Okay? And inside that, you've got the DNA strands and you've got a whole series of messengers in there. It's absolutely chock-a-block with nutrients. It's got loads of B vitamins. It's got lots of elements, zinc, potassium, phosphorus. It's a brilliant piece of equipment because it contains everything that, in fact, in normal times would turn into a chick or whatever other cell it is. We are chock-a-block with those things. Billions of them. Trillions, I think. If this cell is healthy, great, you're fine. If this cell is under stress, then you're not fine, because there's going to be a knock-on effect. One cell starts to go wrong, strangely enough, they start to copy each other. So we get to this point here. I think it's a good enough analogy from my point of view, really. I'm going to go back to the Arabians, the Arabian Nights. The Arabs came up with numbers. Well, that's not entirely true. They were the main players to do with mathematics, and the reason they're so famous is because they came up with nothing. Okay? Zero. Nothing. Now, the way they draw their numbers, their view of the universe is that, this big circle here, that represents infinity, and the dot represents zero or nothing. In between that you have number, and numbers have corners. So a little bit of change of direction here. So everything between nothing and infinity has a corner. That's got one corner. Two corners. Three corners. Four corners. Five corners. Six corners. 7 corners. 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then infinity. this sort of works for me, and you're thinking, where am I going this, and what has this got to do with fight or flight? Well, strangely enough, it's got something to do with zebras on the grassy plain. It works for me is because this is quite a nice illustration of, for the time being, because we will take it in a different direction, your digest and repair, rest, and fight or flight. Think of your resting state in the centre. And if something enters this rather large circumference of your field of vision, if you like, your field of senses, your fight or flight mechanism will be triggered. And so therefore you go from this and then you start bouncing around. And you've got about 9 decisions to make. Okay? See, there was a thin connection there. So, we have, just imagine, you can either close your eyes for this, you imagine a zebra on your grassy plain. Okay? Chewing the grass. Pleasantly, he's engaged in digest and repair. He is eating grass. Packed with proteins. Fantastic. Eating away, his digestive system is working very nicely indeed, thank you very much. If the immune system needed to do any repairs, it's operating pretty well at this point in time. Something starts to head into his field of senses. Water buffalo. Now, because over the millennia, zebras have generally got on with water buffalo, even though, African buffalo, not necessarily water buffalo, just happens to be in water. But that is a picture of a water buffalo. But if we're on a grassy plain, so just say it's an African buffalo. Now, African buffaloes are the biggest killers there is in the world, I think it is. It's lions, more people are killed by buffalo than any other kind of animal. It's the most dangerous animal in Africa. Okay. However, from a zebra's point of view, it's okay. You know, the ear might prick up and maybe the fight or flight might be... No, it analyses what it knows about. It analyses based on memory and experience and says, water buffalo, dangerous? No, I'm okay. Carries on eating his grass. A hunter. Now, unless he is downwind, then the zebra is just not going to have a chance anyway because the gun's way too far away and he's not going to pick him up, and so therefore he's stuffed anyway. So his body's not going to go into fight or flight in the first place. Okay? However, a lion enters the picture. Oh dear. Head goes up, fight or flight goes, okay! And off he trots. Okay, and he'll find somewhere to escape. Your nearest giraffe, as an example. That's a brilliant picture. So, there's an awful lot of stuff going on. Quite literally, in seconds, the zebra has gone from being very calm, quietly eating, mind its own business. Now, his senses are still operating. They are sort of on DEFCON 3 because he is in Africa, but as a ground state, he's operating because he is prey, ultimately. His facial tone is quite tense. He is sort of ready to go at a moment's notice. Humans, on the other hand, we are generally quite safe, particularly in the Western world. We are our facial tone, if you like, or supposedly, should actually be in a fairly relaxed state. It isn't, but we don't really have too much to fear in terms of life-threatening stuff at a moment's notice, generally speaking. We're quite safe. In the case of a zebra, his facial tone is quite high. His ground state of ready to go is like, there could be a lion around here any minute, so I'm sort of operating about at this point, because it might be a big surprise just there. Okay? Once it's all over, after about 15 minutes, because it usually is about 15 minutes, because after 15 minutes all his adrenaline runs out, and he's buggered. Okay? Once he's escaped, lion goes away, he returns back to eating grass. Or maybe not. But he returns back to his resting state very quickly. Is because the danger is over, I'll get on with it. Humans, sadly, have a problem with this. If we could, we would danger out of the way, okay, I'll get on with my work. Unfortunately, humans, if they were a zebra, they'll go, okay, I've got past the lion. Great, fantastic. But what if he comes back again? I don't know. And I'm still in a stress-free state. Well, I don't know whether to eat the grass or eat the berries or run away because there might be another lion. I don't really know what's going to happen because I haven't switched off my stress response yet. So I'm still panicking and I'm not doing myself any good whatsoever because I've run out of adrenaline ages ago because the lion just chased me and I don't know what I'm doing. That's a human for you. Zebra, lion's gone, phew, munch, munch. Okay? So humans do operate in a different way. It's because we have minds. We think a lot. Maybe too much. The zebra is an animal and operates at an animal level and it literally switches from one to the other. This is why, according to Professor Robert Sapolsky, which is this is where this little story comes from. Where has he gone? He's written a great little book, and if you want to learn everything there is about stress in terms of biochemically and everything from pregnancy to zombies even, this man is the man. He's written a fantastic book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. Okay, it's quite amusing, it's very readable for the layman. A good portion of my learning is from this, to a certain degree. He's pretty much quoted by everybody when it comes to stress. He's professor at Stanford University, and he is the man on stress. Interesting chap, and amusing too. Why zebras don't get ulcers is because they don't worry. They get on with it. Stress comes your way, deal with it. When it's finished, crack on doing what you're doing. Humans don't do that. We panic because we still have mortgages to pay, we still have other things, and we start to fret and worry. And ostensibly, our stressors keep triggering our fight or flight mechanism continually, and we start to get ill. Yeah? Anyone got any questions about that so far? Yes?
I just need to backtrack a little bit. Your numbers there, when you're talking about Arabic and corners and things, I wasn't sure if that was... Is that your interpretation, or is that actually...
No, this is how I was taught. When we were in Syria, we were talking about numbers, and he says, no, this is how we're taught of why numbers are the shape they are. Unfortunately, in Syria, they no longer use Arabic numerals, they use Hindi numbers because of the influence of India. Very strange.
Those are actually Arabic
Yes,
numerals?
that's how Arabic numerals are drawn, or would have been drawn originally, hence why the shape they are. Which, to me, it made me reperceive what we mean by numbers.
When you're talking about corners, if you took the number 7,
yes.
Is it the angle, say, between that upright...
It's this corners, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. Not the outer corner, it's the inner corner. Again, I find it's an interesting illustration of their perception of things, and there's something as simple as number. It's a nice bit of trivia, if you like. But the zero and the nothing, the zero and the infinity, I think is an interesting concept, and it works for me anyway. Yeah? So, hang on a minute. Let's go through this. Oh, mush.
It's resting.
Yes, it's true. So this brings us to, finally, fight or flight, or the 4 Fs. Any guess what all 4 of them are? Fourth one? Yes, sex. Well done. So the term fight or flight, nobody got the joke. I usually get to laugh. Walter Cannon in 1936 termed the term fight or flight, and he was also essentially the first person to use the term stress in relationship to physiology, the physical world in essence, outside of the industry. Yeah. And it's only in recent years, since the 1980s, it's then become, we use it for almost everything these days. The thing is, you don't need to feel stressed to be under stress or to be stressed. Some people can be actually very happy, but they're stressed out of their minds because their fight or flight mechanism is still operating. Fight or flight does not mean feeling bad or necessarily wanting to run away or fight. It can be actually a very pleasurable experience for some people. Some people, they work in a very stressful environment and they get a kick out of it because of things like dopamine and serotonin. When you win a game, when you win at a prize fight, when you get a promotion, dopamine is released. And that release of dopamine gives you that winning feeling. So fight or flight does not necessarily mean bad. And this is something else that we tend to think of it as, oh, worry, stress, saber-tooth tiger. Yes, but no. Is that it applies to so many other aspects. Okay? At this point in time, my fight or flight mechanism is working, but I'm actually quite happy to be here. Yeah? Okay. So, when we're talking about what really happens, is you've got stress, in essence, increases your blood pressure. Okay? Elevates your heart rate. And it, in the case of flight, it diverts blood flow to your legs, your thigh muscles, because you need to run. It does not divert it everywhere. Directly, the body knows exactly what it's doing. One is, run away! The word run is a bit of a giveaway here. Run, that means we don't care what our arms are doing at this particular point in time. For this, lion, go. Okay? So, diversion to our legs. And we need to make use of all that extra energy. If we don't, people who are stressed all the time and want to run away tend to have jiggly legs, restless leg syndrome. So you're okay there, brother. Okay, so you also have systolic pressure. That means the force of the blood leaving the heart. And diastolic pressure, the force that returns back to the heart. Yes, so blood pressure goes up, so systolic goes up, and you actually have a change. Okay? The arteries themselves start to stiffen up. Is because the increased pressure, just as you'd have water in a hose, you need to have a bit more of a hefty hose if you increase the pressure, otherwise it'll burst. So the muscles around your arteries and veins, they increase, particularly around your arteries, because that's the outgoing pressure is much higher. So therefore our muscles start to get really tense around our blood flow, so that quite literally our hearts don't burst. Yeah? And this applies to our circulatory system. So it affects our blood flow, it affects what's going on through those hose pipes we have through our body. Sustained use of that, in other words, if the outgoing pressure is maintained for too long, we get what's called an arrhythmia. An unbalanced heart is because the heart on one side is trying to work hard, and like any muscle, you use it a lot, it'll get stronger. So what happens is one side of the heart quite literally gets way bigger than the other side, because you are being asked to run away, you are being asked to work much harder to increase your blood pressure. Then you have a hardening of artery wall, because the muscles around the arteries are also getting stiffer and harder. And so therefore your body is going to be less elastic, less adaptable to being able to go back to where it was before. So again, the body is very clever at adapting to circumstances. If we think about how humans can survive, and we'll come back to these two characters in a second, or not in a second, later on today, is the Eskimos in Alaska, the Inuits and the Yupiks, versus, say, the Maasai in Kenya. Their physiology is completely different. Their environment is completely different. What they have to deal with is completely different. It's very stressful for the body, per se, but as a ground state, because the body's adapted, because this is how living is, they don't get heart disease. They don't get high blood pressure, particularly. And yet you would say that what the body has to deal with is hugely stressful. Surely, well, yes, but the body's over millennia has adapted to what it's got. This is what I've got in front of me. Can we deal with it? Do I have anything else to deal with? No, not really. Just keep ourselves warm. So in the case of the Eskimos, we need to have plenty of fat, thank you very much, to keep warm. In the case of the Kenyans, it's blooming warm, so actually I need to remain fairly thin. And food is completely different in both cases. One has an awful lot of whale and seal blubber, not much fish, and no vegetables or fruit. The other one has access to blood, milk, and goat's meat, some fruit in season, hardly any vegetables. And yet the swings of the seasons change quite significantly in Kenya. They just go from cold to really cold in Alaska. So quite different, and yet the body has been able to adapt to those circumstances under those stresses and survive okay. Thank you very much. So it is very different, and this is where we're talking about fight or flight as being it is to do with context, where you are and are you familiar with it, not familiar with it, how threatening is it, and can the body adapt to it? Does it have time to adapt? If the answer is a lion in a split second, the answer is no, we can run, but not for very far. And ostensibly a zebra has adapted over millennia to hopefully get a bit more camouflage, because in a nice, large, sunny environment with yellow grass, it's decided in its wisdom to colour itself black and white. Maybe something went wrong somewhere, I don't know. It's also got some very good hind legs. There are a couple of pictures that I could have put up of zebras giving lions what for with their hind legs if the lion gets too close. So it's an automatic response. In that particular case, is that if the lion has snuck up on him and got really good, initially there is a fight mechanism. In other words, kick the black legs, knock out the lion, then run.
I reckon what it is that the strikes, this is just coming to my head.
Yes.
I reckon the strikes are when all the zebras are together, you can't tell when one starts and when it ends.
That's quite possible.
Like
And there's
fishes in a shoal.
Yes.
There's a bugger if you get separated.
Yes, you don't know where the head is or the bottom, and there's also an argument that maybe in the sun haze, black and white and stripes is quite difficult, because there's something about cats and straight lines and curves. I can't remember what it was, but there's a whole bunch of experiments done on bringing up a cat in straight line, in only where there was only straight lines, and bringing up a cat where there's only curves, and you then switch them over and they knock into things because they have no experience of them. There's a lot of postulations of why do things have spots, stripes and other things.
Well, it's like sunlight and shadow.
Yeah, quite possibly. There was lots of postulations. It was just my little joke of black and white in a yellow place, but yes. So we are sort of going to be heading really in this area, fight or flight. Fright really is the rough equivalent of your body having a heart attack. Or rather, its fight or flight response having a heart attack, because it doesn't really know which to do, or rather it does both at the same time. It goes, ah! Do I need to fight at this point or do I need to run away? I don't know. Do I need to fight at this point or run away? And at this time the body's going, basically it's burning up all its adrenaline, and then it has nothing left and goes, ugh! And so you're welded to the spot. You know, the old bunnies in the headlights, that kind of thing, is the bunnies just going, I have no idea which to do, because is that a friend? Do I run? Do I fight? I don't know. By then it's too late. Fright is not very useful from anybody's point of view, because if you're locked in, I'm sure there must be an application. Staying still. Squirrels do it, I suppose. I'm not here. I'm a leaf. Yes.
Wayne was telling me about his courses,
Yes.
which is very much to do with controlling applied violence.
Okay.
Like I said, this fright mechanism fits right into the bill. Quite often, the person who enters into that fright state may be armed. They're armed and they're being informed by the police or whoever the authorities are to put down the gun, but they don't hear them.
Yeah, they can't.
And they get the 3 warnings and get blown away because they haven't heard, because they've entered into this state and their perception has closed down.
Yep. It's quite literally, it is having a heart attack, because heart attack isn't your body. For those who don't know, heart attack is not your heart stopping. Your heart is actually trying to go both ways at the same time. It's going, okay, do I contract or expand at the moment? And it goes, and the useful little electrodes, they don't start your heart, they actually stop it for you, and then allow your body naturally to start it up again. So actually, they're not actually trying to revive you; they're trying to kill you. And if you wake up again, they've succeeded in stopping your heart for you, because a heart attack is both ways. Fright is roughly the same sort of thing. I have very little knowledge of this, and I haven't really read too much into fright, so if someone wants to chip in there of anything different. Now, sex is a curious thing, because it is affected by fight or flight quite a lot. In other words, if you're either scared or running away or actually trying to fighting, generally speaking, you're not that interested in copulating. It's sort of the last thing on your mind, generally speaking. Lion's chasing you. Am I interested in my girlfriend at this point in time? Probably not. But not necessarily. For some, being in a fight state can be quite arousing. So there are caveats to that. But generally speaking, sex is usually impeded, or fertility, the ability to procreate, is impeded if you are stressed. There are other factors that involve in stress, in sex, and that's to do with things like environmental pressures and also toxicity, okay, which we'll be mentioning a little later, and the health of your amino acids. Sex is also a bit of an anomaly because it sort of involves both. Is that for a man to get an erection, as an example, is that the penis actually needs to be in a relaxed state so that you can have plenty of blood flow. However, the rest of your body needs to have a bit of get up and go, so it needs to be engaged in the fight or flight mechanism, generally the fight bit. Yes, okay. So it is oscillating between sympathetic and parasympathetic, or fight or flight and digest and repair, because it needs to get this very tricky balance between the two. Oddly enough, with women it's the same, but sort of in reverse. Is that actually a woman tends to be generally quite relaxed and willing, but to get going, she actually needs to be a little bit more clenched and raring to go in other areas. Okay? So this odd meeting in the middle when it comes to sex, the body is sort of breaking some of the rules, or rather they're bending them quite a bit, as it involves the sympathetic and the parasympathetic at the same time, sort of. Or just oscillating very quickly between the two. And this is why biochemically and physiologically an erection is actually one of the most complex things there is apparently for the body to do. That and standing up. Standing up apparently is also really complex. Well, I don't know where to go from there really. So, moving swiftly on. So let us validate what we mean. We've used the word sympathetic and parasympathetic before. Again, sympathetic, the word comes from Galen, who was a famous herbalist, a Greek herbalist of the 3rd century AD, I believe, or BC. No, AD. AD, yes. That's right. I'm confusing him with Socrates, as you do. It's called sympathetic because he reckoned at the time that the sympathetic nerves, the wires, the response was sympathetic to your mood. Okay? And parasympathetic, nothing very complex, it just meant the parasympathetic nerves were just next to, that's what para means, next to the sympathetic ones. Not very complicated. Okay? Interestingly, the stuff about facial tone and mood was not actually far off the truth. But this is why we have those words. But to me, I always get them the wrong way around, because sympathetic just sounds friendly, and we tend to think of sympathetic as being friendly, whereas it actually means fight or flight in this particular case. So we have fight or flight, digest and repair. Pretty much, and again I'm making a very blanket statement which is actually completely wrong really, but when fight or flight is engaged, digest and repair does not occur. If those stressors we were talking about go on for too long and we haven't been able to adapt, you will get ill, because your immunity, your digest and repair part, isn't working properly. You will go downhill actually really quite quickly if you've been under long-term stress. And the reason for this is you get continued high blood pressure, which means continued stress. The muscles around the blood vessels strengthen to accommodate the raised blood flow, as I've already mentioned. And then, as I've already said this, haven't I? Rigidity of blood vessels. Yes, I have already said that. Now, another aspect of your fight or flight mechanism is this, which is where it's your ground state. When you breathe in, the body's in essence in fight or flight mode. When you breathe out, it is in essence in digest and repair mode. So even though we're not stressed at this moment in time, as I'm breathing in and breathing out, when you're breathing in and breathing out, your body is actually oscillating from one to the other. It's checking. In the same way that the zebra has got one ear up checking for that lion and its environment, we're in essence doing the same thing. We are checking from one to the other, because fight or flight mechanism also, it protects us. It is a survival mechanism. We do need it to be operating. if you'll stand up for a moment. So I want you to stand up straight, okay? And with a big smile on your face, it's very important you've got a big smile on your face, okay? Chest out, and go, I feel very, very happy. I feel very, very happy. Yes, okay, no problem at all there, is there? No? So we want to sink down here, okay? Shoulders forward, head bowed, and with a bit of a grumpy face on, say, I feel very, very miserable. I feel very, very miserable. Okay, that's fine. Yeah. Okay, so there was no problem with either of those because your physiology, your physical being is confirming what you're saying. There is no disparity whatsoever. So now what I want you to try and do, okay, is I want you to bow down here, yes? Put a big smile on your face and say, I feel very, very happy.
I feel very, very happy.
Doesn't feel quite right, does it? There's a disparity, isn't it? Because you're saying one thing, but your physiology is saying something completely different. And there is... Sorry, sit down now.